Alex Answer here, July 9th, 2015. I'm going to talk about living off the grid within the grid, something I have some experience doing. Having built in September of 2014 a micro teardrop camper using a Harbor Freight trailer. They retail for about $370. You can find coupons online, 20% off, 25% off the Harbor Freight trailer. It's recommended that you get the one that has the capacity to carry 1,720 pounds, which is the largest trailer that they have. Don't mess with the trailers that can only safely carry 1,000. I no longer own this trailer because I was able to upgrade to something else, and it was given away to a couple in need. But I have the experience of building it. I am not a master craftsman. There was a viewer of this YouTube channel that helped me build this, and we went out and got the materials. And there's videos you can watch on how to build it yourself that will give you far more instruction and far more ideas if you're a builder or if you're an aspiring builder. But I can give you a few general ideas on how easily it can be done and how quickly it can be done. And the more experience those involved in the project, the more experience that they have with working with their hands, with being a handyman, for example, or take a craftsman or someone that knows how to build tables and chairs. Take a few minutes and watch the videos on YouTube on how to build your own homemade teardrop camper. There's other names for it. I tried, or I started calling it the micro camper, because it is a camper on wheels that you can pull with a car. But of course, I recommend a truck. And the truck that I used was a 1985 Toyota pickup. That's a lightweight vehicle. I wouldn't recommend, unless it's in great condition, pulling one of those in the rain, in the snow, and then, slamming on your brakes and expecting your vehicle to stop. You could easily get into an accident with one of those teardrop campers. If the weight of the actual camper itself, the momentum is one that will push the lightweight vehicle forward into another car. Now, I had a light accident. Thank God I had insurance, and I'm not going to get long-winded with this one, but a lot of certain positive things have happened to me in my life that have helped me move forward in my evolution as an independent man, learning to live more effectively off the grid, either in urban environments or in rural environments. Long-term viewers of this channel know that one of my passions, one could call a hobby, I call it my life path, spiritual path. I like to report on things that are currently happening. So I spend a lot of time discussing economics, geopolitics, things like solar flares and how these cycles of the sun are impacting cycles of human activity on this planet. We can look at wars, we can look at earthquakes. I enjoy looking at what is beyond just the conspiracy reality that a lot of people are looking at, and what is the nature of this matrix itself. And there are many of us alive today that really want to know the ultimate truth as to why we're here without getting dogmatic with it, religious style. But we honestly want to know why we're here and how we can evolve. And what I think that we're seeing in real time here is more people waking up to the fact that we have more power than maybe what we were taught in school or taught by our parents. And a part of evolution in this realm, in this physical realm, is evolving beyond those traps in this life that want to keep us on the hamster wheel, to where our energy is going only to work for something we won't even own. And we end up, people end up in this society allowing themselves to be compromised because of what this system can give them. And I talk a lot about that as well on this channel. So for years I've been on this path of what some could call truth-telling, to the best of my ability, because it is the path that I choose to walk on. And for years I worked in restaurants, I worked in grocery stores, I paid my rent, I lived with roommates, and I found that the world that I was building for myself, the website, the YouTube channel, it really almost, I wouldn't want to use the word sabotage, but it really affected the other aspects of my life more and more as time grew on. Because society does not reward those members of it that are outside the box. It punishes those members of society. And so for years I took the punishment. I moved from place to place to place. I lived in the city, working the job, dealt with many tickets at one point or another for ridiculous things, a lot of money going into the system, getting into the system at a younger age. Again, a lot of time put into the system in other ways through working through my earlier years all the way up to about my late 20s. And it was at that time that I started thinking more seriously about my future, not being another sitting duck in the city, and thinking more about scouting off-the-grid spots. So the last several years of my life has been marked by travel and scouting to different locations, living in different environments, facing different challenges, but all those experiences have been like accruing a lot of knowledge. Things I wouldn't do again, things that I think that I will try at this point to make the situation a little better. And as I accrue more knowledge and information, I'm able to make better decisions to empower my own life. And sometimes I'm making better decisions now because of the mistakes that I've already made. So after scouting different locations and living off the grid in Colorado for a year, off the grid in a yurt with a wood stove, that's as extreme off the grid almost as you can get. It wasn't even close to a water. Well, it was 3 miles, one that I could walk to a river. So in an ultimate survival situation, you could survive out there if there's some water in the Rio Grande River. You can bring back your multi-gallon container. Hopefully you're fit enough to do that. I'm not claiming that I'm the Hulk, but I can haul a couple gallons, a couple miles, no problem. But I felt that something was lacking. I felt the need to go back to Portland, maybe get back on Access TV, which is what I did. You can watch some of my old episodes. I recommend the Real Portlandia episode, where I'm discussing Portland, this sprawling microcosm that's really reflecting what's going on in our world. The social ills, the greed, the manufactured gender divide. I went full in analyzing what had become of the city that I was born into. And this whole time I was living in my vehicle for at least the first 6 months in the back of this Honda, this 1985 Honda. And there were some YouTube videos where I was straight up honest about the sheer pain I was in of just not having a place to shower and the stigma of being a man who was openly declaring himself homeless on YouTube, because it was a social experiment to also show people how shallow this world has become. If you put on a suit and tie, and there was a time where I did, that was my uniform. It was the suit and tie. Even though I wasn't making money, it was a clean presentation. And people like that, but I also don't want to be worshipped and people acting like I'm some sort of celebrity. I've always tried to keep things real, and at certain times in my life, I've had some deep soul-searching moments to where I've done new things and I became a different person. And I started looking at things a different way. And so there was a phase of my life where it was no more jacket, it's t-shirt all the time. And I'm going off-grid and I'm going to live in freedom. And then I saw the nastiness come out of people. Oh, you should go back into the grid. This is strange. You can't survive off the grid. People that watched this channel at that time were polluting my comment section with "you can't." I bet a lot of you people are new viewers and weren't around then. Or you weren't commenting negative things then, or you won't admit it, and neither of us remember it. But I remember back at that time a lot of shit talkers in 2013 when I was in Colorado. You can't do this, you can't do that. Those weren't government trolls. Those were regular people in the grid that liked what I was doing in the grid, but somehow their manliness felt threatened by me trying to go out into new terrain, into terrain that they weren't going into. Specifically San Luis Valley, Rio Grande Ranches of south central Colorado, in that spot near the Rio Grande River. It was like the land before time. And I think that it threatened a few egos out there that thought they were top dog survivalists to see this younger, boyish looking man that looks younger than what he actually is. I am 35, that has his health intact. I think it rubbed a few people the wrong way. Where's your water? You can't do that. You don't have running water. That's crazy. Actually, it's strategic. It's very strategic to train yourself to survive in harsh terrains, especially when you have genetics that seem to be able to survive such harsh terrains. And I know my ancestors on my father's side did survive harsh terrains in mountain ranges like the San Luis Valley, or mountain ranges like the Incan Mountains of South America or Peru. And so, being that, on a side note, my genetics are partially split between the East and the West. On the West side, you have Austrian, Germanic, Welsh bloodline. But I do think that I have had a strong desire to travel and navigate and be in certain areas simply because of that biological diversity within me on a microcosmic level. And so I think that part of my travels have been inspired by that, desire to feel what my body feels like in certain areas. And I just got to say, here in Colorado, my physical body, mind, body, and spirit all feel much stronger than how they did while living in Portland, Oregon at sea level. So I felt like I had a need to return to that region in order to evolve even more my ability to live with less, but this time back in a city that, honestly, very concerned about the direction that Portland's going on, its future, and spent a lot of years pretty much warning people about what Portland could be like under a martial law situation, a civil unrest, food riot situation, a foreign occupation of America by foreign governments, why Portland could be a target, why Seattle is strategic, why Los Angeles is strategic. So with Los Angeles and Seattle both being clear targets of foreign governments in an occupied America situation, Portland is also right up there. Opinions like this and other contrarian views about the not so good aspects that come about from so much migration to Portland, it isolated me into a box to where I was probably one of the most hated people on Access TV because I wasn't on board with the mass way of thinking. So I lived my life in that vehicle that year, also being recognized by people every now and then at the grocery store, people glaring at me. So I dealt with hatred, not just feeling invisible. In a city that has its own social ills, I would say a soft form of racism within it, more so than in other American cities, which is not exactly consistent with the traditional image of Portland. But Portland has become a city very divided based on appearance, maybe more so than the city that you're watching me from right now, so don't get defensive or even think I'm talking about you or a single group. Portland seemed to bring out a lot of the shallowness in my observations in just about everybody in every racial group, by the way, of people, and that's a whole other subject. So I was surviving on a multi-pronged level. Spiritually, physically, mentally. I still went through pain, but I was meant to go through that pain and come out as a survivor. And I lived in this homemade Teardrop camper. And there's so many things that happen. It's like, okay, I did want to reflect in this video about my time in Portland, but I really wanted to focus on the trailer. With some money that came in from some viewers for me to help my situation, instead of spend it on a hotel at that time, or go out and party, or do what a lot of people do, I put it into a off-grid micro camper on a Harbor Freight trailer. I talked earlier about how you can see certain models of that. You can watch some of my older videos on that. And so for the next couple of months, at least 6 months, 7 months, I lived in that thing 7 months before I upgraded to something else and got out of Portland in about a week. And the rest is history, and my new life is still being built here in Southern Colorado, and I have aspirations to live off the grid next year. And between now and next year, I'm going to have a blueprint in my mind for a home that I'm going to build with cheap, affordable materials. And when I do that, and as I do that, And what I do with this excess of time to maybe make myself a few bucks here and there to take care of expenses and costs, it's all going to be documented, because it's all, in my opinion, one large success story. But let me step back. For 7 months, I lived covertly in this micro home on wheels. It only cost me $1,300, but you can do it for far less, I would say, maybe even $800 or $900, depending on cheaper building materials, in particular plywood. We went new, we went weatherproof for the base. So I'm spending $50 a sheet on there. I'm spending $300, $400 on just the sheets of wood, the plywood. And then, of course, there's the other things. But this can be done for a cheaper price. You can save money, especially if you now plan to maybe build this at some point in your future, or you're thinking about it. Getting those Harbor Freight trailers that are 1720 capacity, to me, you're getting the best bang for your buck compared to what they're asking for at Lowe's and or Home Depot for those trailers that are 600 plus, 700 plus. Now, if you've got the money, by all means, go for the one with more structural integrity. But the Harbor Freight trailers, just because they're coming from China, I believe they are, don't knock the potential of those trailers to really give you a lot of bang for your buck. I highly recommend adding reinforcement bars. If you're a guy that knows how to work with your hands and you're a welder, reinforce things like the tongue. Reinforce things like other things. I went through a couple different issues with it, with the tongue splitting, and a little bit further where it goes out like this and it becomes the box, that area split. It was traumatic when it happened, but both times I was able to get it repaired. And I'm trying to think of how many different, I think it happened 1 to 2 different times that I had that type of a split. And so basically, psychological stress aside from maybe, not having enough privacy, because, it's, you can live in one of those things, but you're still going to desire your own privacy. And if you're in a big city, you may not like the fact, and I know I didn't like the fact, that there's not a whole lot of places to park to just be alone. And so one of these things are really good for living off the grid and jumping to something else. You can drive one of these things out to a property where you plan to maybe build something. That was my initial plan until my plans changed. But you can drive one of these things out and live in it like, a more durable tent while you're building another structure. You can also live in it in the city if you're in, say, you can park from place to place. I don't know how sustainable that is on one psychologically, though, long term. But it is a short-term solution that could be a jumping point to something else. I also think that the off-the-grid micro camper is ideal for the working man, handyman, who may have his tools in the front and he's busy during the day. He's not spending his day in the micro camper. He's out working, or he's out doing things, or he's out going to the gym. One thing that I did do when I was in Portland is made sure that I got my showers at the gym. I used to go to Friendly House on 26th and Thurman. If you ever end up down and out in Portland and you don't want to go to a regular muscle gym, you just want to go shower, work out in a small little community gym, and then go about your day, I recommend the Friendly House on 26th and Thurman. And what I did, of course, it is a damper if you don't have good allies to go and cook something at their house. But it's about adapting your survival skills in the city. It's like a form of training. And so you get your water containers, you get your portable cooking stuff, you figure out what you can cook. Maybe you're a mountain house guy. Maybe you're a guy that likes rice and beans and things of that nature. All that is possible. But then there's that psychological thing. Oh, people are going to see you. Oh, the homeless guy. In some days, in some cases, when the sun was shining out brightly, I didn't mind because my energy was positive. And in some of those cases where my energy was positive, a few people came around going, that looks really cool. Did you build that yourself? And I'd say, no, I didn't. Actually, a friend helped me, and we did. Can I see inside? And I'd show them inside. And people had never seen anything like that before. Now, mind you, I've been really into this off-the-grid stuff, food supply. I helped open a survival store for a couple guys. It was their money that paid for the space, but they want to sell things at their rate. After a couple months, we went our separate ways because I did not agree with the business model. You can also see that business model at survivalcenter.com. He's reduced his prices since then. But long story short, I have a lot of experience dealing with different survivalists and from reading different books, gaining different pieces of knowledge. It wasn't until I met a particular person in Portland that offered to help me build this. And we both looked at videos on YouTube. YouTube is a great source of information and inspiration. Hopefully this video will be doing the same. And we're like, we can do that for this much money. Do you want to do it? And I'm like, yes. And so even though I was under stressful conditions, when I was able to actually afford and put down $300, thanks to my friend in Texas, South Texas, an area that my friend lives in that is not exactly wealthy itself, but probably struggling a lot more than, say, Portlanders or the people of Portland. That was an act of giving. And that I then turned into a trailer that then created the foundation for something that I lived in for 7 months that I later gave away to a homeless couple over 50 that came here from California that are gravely struggling. Some people just think I hate all people from California and other places. I felt the calling inside to give this to them when I was able to jump forward in my own life with a better vehicle, live-in vehicle, in a destination of South Colorado. So I don't want people to overlook the potential for them to be able to handle the blow of whatever's coming, because I still see a lot of people out there that are not prepared to live mobily. And this whole off-the-grid micro camper unit can provide someone the privacy. Again, we had it all covered up with the option of opening up the windows, taking the insulation, the thick, insulation that was cut to the size that you can buy by the sheet at Home Depot and Lowe's. And then now there's sunlight coming through. There's a window, then they can cover it up. That's really important when you don't have a home for your brain to produce a certain amount of melatonin. For your melatonin cycle to have a certain consistency. That insanity that you see from some homeless, that's not necessarily always coming from drug addiction. The drug addiction, alcoholism, can be spurred by a major interruption of a natural, normal melatonin sleep cycle. I know this is not commonly discussed. I'm telling you, it's really true. If someone does not get a normal, healthy amount of sleep simply because they're exposed to night lights that are out there, street lights, the big street lights, that stuff is toxic to the man that's living in his vehicle. He wants to get somewhere where it's dark, to where you go into a sleep state and then you wake up with energy about to do something the next day. Hopefully you're working somewhere, or you have a hobby, a place to work out, or a place to channel your creative energies. And that's something that I really, if the people of Portland, the city of Portland, was anything other than a mafia corrupt institution, it would, with its surplus of millions of dollars, create building centers. Create a real way people can create mobile tiny homes. Not talk about a tiny home community that the city actually owns, that they would actually turn into slums and actually charge people to live in. That's not really a solution to the homeless problem. Sure, there's some homeless that want to reintegrate back into society and pay rent and be little, good little bitches again if they were to be accepted back into society. But, again, some people are going their own way because they're becoming freer, more conscious individuals. It's not just economic. Part of it is learning about our own power. And so some people are learning to go into business for themselves. They're buying and selling on eBay. They're getting jobs on Craigslist. They're buying and selling on Craigslist. They're providing a service. They're getting really good at maybe working with their hands. I am a speaker. I deliver information. I talk about things a lot of these other people don't talk about. And I put myself out there, so that's what I do. I may expand and learn how to work more with my hands in certain areas. Eventually I'm going to have my own home, and I'll be showing people how to build your own walls and cement those walls underground. That's all in my goal list. But I certainly have not lived up to the expectations of a number of individuals that I've come across in the past that have expected me to be some sort of, survivalist fanatic like them. And so there's been personality clashes, and ultimately I continue to go my own way. And I try to steer clear of the lone wolf terminology. But instead, I actually have to protect myself because I've come across a number of individuals, a number of them, that have had ill intent. And so you got to be very careful when you do accept help from others. How much help? And you always have to question, is this coming with a price, or is this a trap? So there's advice I can give you along those lines of be careful who you invite out to your land to be your survivalist buddy. Most survivalists tend to agree that they don't tend to get along with people that think just like them, because there's a power play over who's the one that has it figured out. And instead of cooperative building of colonies of liberty, you have battles, you have infighting, you have men that are actually directing their anger and aggression at other men that are on the same path, because it's a power. Some people are in it to be in control of an army. They're like operating out a reptilian brain, and you got to be very careful when you're dealing with other survivalists like you, because there's going to be a power issue as to who has it figured out. I've determined that I am meant to live alone for probably the remainder of my life, but I am willing to work with others towards a common purpose: farming, growing quinoa, building earthships, developing alternative media in some way, shape, or form. Some people have helped me, and in some way, shape, or form, I'm on a regular basis helping others. But it's also important for me to keep doing videos on a regular basis, because the one way that I help the most people is sharing the ideas, and in particular, keeping it on this conversation, the truth of what is possible. And so, men and women in today's day and age can maintain their own dignity with the knowledge that would say $1,000 instead of putting that in your body. And oh my God, man, the willpower. When you've got a full-time heroin addict that's been at it for 10, 20, 30 plus years, they will find a way to feed it, their habit of several $1,000s a week. They will find a way to steal and turn over whatever they've got to do to maintain that that's almost shocking. Imagine if they were to apply that to actually build in something for themselves, or imagine if they applied that to getting out of the city that made them want to use and drink. Just imagine. These videos here are there to recenter the focus on just imagine what is possible. If a junkie can do that, and I've seen in other circumstances people heavily challenged emotionally and mentally off the grid in the San Luis Valley of South Central Colorado, people with alcohol problems. I'm just going to tell you right now, there was this one guy who would scream about how he had STDs from having sex with prostitutes in Denver in the 90s. And they're like, dude, we know you're not lying. We never said you were lying. Pull your fucking pants up. This dude only grows tens of thousands of dollars worth of marijuana every year that he sells to a regular. This dude only takes that money only to buy that special Native American medicine that he's rubbing, trying to get that thing to go away. It's like, dude, why don't you try some colloidal silver or something? I don't know, man, something. Olive leaf extract. Just stop pulling your pants down. I knew then right away in 2013 when I met this guy that would go out and get his own water in a 200-gallon tank, fill that puppy up in 20 minutes using a sub pump, as they're called. You can find one for $40, connect it with an inverter. If you have a water source, it's going to pull that water in 20 minutes, fill up that 200-gallon tank on his cheap little pickup truck. Haul that pickup truck back to his off-the-grid home several miles away. And with another hosing system, he's sitting there watering his plants that are all living, housed in these beautiful greenhouses with wood and paneling. I mean, we're not just talking about a bunch of plastic. I've seen people with severe cognitive impairments live off the grid. And what I'm seeing people that are so damn intelligent, they're too smart for their own good. They're creating arguments for themselves in their own head as to why they can't live free. Oh, you can't do that. There's no water. This is where it's at. Funny how things are kind of switching, and we're getting more water here in Colorado, the supposed place you can't live off the grid. And Oregon, Washington, and California are all experiencing issues with water, issues with overpopulation, issues with the rising cost of living, issues with, I'd say, a rising crime, and definitely there's a connection with the rising crime and a fall of farming and a reduced water table. They parallel each other. It's like civilization's coming to an end, like the Mayans or the Incas or something like else. You know, there's something going on in some of these cities where you look at what's going on with the water, and you look at what's going on with the people, and you look at what's going on with the pollution of also the rivers and the air, and it's like one big wheel of mental insanity. And I do think that Portland is not a healthy place to live. I definitely keep bringing it up. Don't move there. Stay out of there. And if you are there, get out while you can. And if you got some sort of attitude about Portland being some super progressive place, you know what? Friend, brother, we're not going to go down that road this morning. Because I'm having a half good day. Okay? What I will say is that there is value in information. So, what is possible? It's possible for someone to exit the grid, exit the system, completely eliminate rent from their life. You may not have a fridge, you may not have a power system, but you can live in a situation where you're getting a good night's rest, you're getting the sleep that you need, you're not being woken up by the sounds of certain things. Well, of course you are if you're going to park in certain areas, and that was always an issue for me. But whatever is coming financially, you can think outside the box of the guns, the beans, and the bag of rice. Nothing wrong with those two things. But the traditional view of preparing for the shit to hit the fan that a lot of people subscribe to is flawed on a number of levels. First and foremost, it's already been hitting the fan for a number of us that have gone our own way, okay, that are trying to exist outside society. And a lot of you are still living in the cities, from what I gather. And so there could be jumping off points for you. I don't mean killing yourself, jumping up points. Ways you can move forward if something adversely undesirable happens to you in the near future. It could be a job loss. It could be a massive increase in your rent because the property values are increasing around you. And the taxes for those properties are increasing around you. It could come from a massive spike in the cost of food at the grocery stores. There's a lot of things that are happening right now that are really challenging to a whole lot of folks. Living off-grid or living free or living independently is something that is tangible, but people need to start looking at those things and making those transitions. And there is a transition. There is a gray area. It's not a black and white situation. It's not, okay, life is stable. Oh, okay, now we're invaded and bombs are dropping. Oh, now there's no food in the grocery store. Now it's time to, eat the canned butter. Oh, now it's time to go into the bunker. Oh, now it's time to crack open that can of beans and just start farting away. Oh, now it's time to start masturbating to that gun and get ready to fire away at the hordes of invaders. These scenarios that people live in each and every day as they say they're prepping are not really 100% in line with the current reality of the what is right now. The what is right now is the long emergency. It's the gray area. It's people that are either forced out of society or they're becoming too damn intelligent for their own good in the eyes of others. And they're realizing, wait a minute, my whole life I've been working for others. My whole life I've been answering to others. My whole life I've been living by other people's rules. From roommates to bosses to girlfriends to policemen to everything. There's 1,001 reasons for someone in today's society when they become more conscious and actually tapped into their sacred masculine to no longer want to submit to the rules of others. And to do that in some cases, it does require a change of environment. Step one, no longer being a slave to the landlord. In some cases, or your roommates, or your girlfriend, or your boyfriend, your husband, or your wife. I'm not here to get involved in marriages. I'm just here to say sometimes people allow themselves to become slaves to others because it's more convenient. I'm here to promote independence. And in this case, I'm talking about as some people become more independent, they don't want to answer to anybody. In some cases, it's required of them to go their own way 110% in order to find out what they're actually capable of. And to get through that, they may have to walk through some fire. They may end up not getting a shower every day. They may be in situations where they don't have the luxury of shaving every day. But you know what? It's almost like earning your dues. And moving on from that experience is almost like getting out of prison. And this experience that I've been through the last couple of years and certain things that have happened, including the certain judgment that some people have thrown in the comment section when I went out and did certain things that they would never do. It's been a huge education process for me as to what I'm capable of, which is more than what I even thought last year. Last year, I thought, oh no, I don't have any money. I'm on the edge. How can I ever own an RV or a camper? I thought I wasn't going to be able to make it out to Colorado next year. And then it's just like following my intuition and following the synchronistic clues of the universe when the universe comes in and in some cases helps through other people, God working through people, so on and so forth. And also understanding that the only reason all this was able to manifest, in my opinion, is because I spent years dedicating my time towards providing information for people like you. And it's only through that people have found me. Otherwise, I'm just another guy on the street. But I'm not just another guy on the street because I'm not living like some of these people. And there are some people on the street that are also on the path of sharing knowledge and information. They may be at the early stages. But I remember reading one guy that had completely opted out from life that was living in Portland Parks writing his own book. But he wasn't talking about, conspiracy research or any problems. It's health, it's wellness, it's fasting, it's solar gazing, it's everything dealing with. And he was also a person that earned money being a Reiki healer or working with energies and things of that nature. There are many people that are good, talented, that have worked professionally for years, that just in the recent few years, something's happened within their consciousness to where they're like, okay, I'm no longer going to be a slave. This is ending. I'm going to live free. I'm going to be healthy. I'm going to have a powerful energy field. I'm going to create things. I'm going to manifest things, and so on and so forth. And so in order for them to progress, they have had to remove obstacles from their life. And it has come in the form of abusive relationships, in the workplace, in the bedroom, with family, and other things. People have opted out, and they have been building their own free world ahead of them. And so I think behind the scenes, on a subtle level, consciously, that's what's really spurring some of the off-the-grid stuff. It is not centered solely in disaster prep. It is really centered in living a freedom-based lifestyle. And again, that is why many survivalists do not get along. It's because there is a high percentage of us that wants to lead the army, and that doesn't work, folks. That doesn't work. When we come in and we interact with others in our own personal dealings and we're looking at potential allies, you got to understand that you're coming to the table as an equal. And if someone is trying to play alpha male, or if someone doesn't have the confidence and they're willing to be an underline, then there may be an imbalance of energy. You don't want any control freaks, and you don't want any weak links. We want confident. I want to work with confident, respectful, honorable, moral individuals that understand the difference between conscious behavior and unconscious disruptive behavior. So I've covered a lot of things in this video, but this is really centered for the independent male or female on his own or her own, living in, say, an urban environment that is concerned about the immediate future, that may have a vehicle. maybe a small pickup, maybe a car, that may be able to pull something that they can live in, that can maybe get them out of harm's way. This video is not about predicting something by September 15, but you're going to see a lot of different things coming at you in the next 5 years. Many things that may get you thinking about whether or not you're actually living in a part of the earth that is making you happy. You may be on the East Coast right now, you may be on the West Coast right now, but I almost guarantee you, I can almost promise you, because I truly believe that in the next few years, you will see a mass exodus from people on the Western Coast to certain places in America that I consider to be far more stable of an environment than the most populated places in America, which is the West and East Coast. These are concentrations of humans that are living in these hives by choice. We do not currently live in a society where we have been told by number to live in certain zones. And there are some places in the world where people do live like that. In North Korea and throughout times in China, there's been that type of control, including Russia. There's also been times where people have been drafted in our own country, and told what to do with their life. And there's a lot of trauma that the U.S. military has brought some discipline to some men, but a lot of things that go on in the military that we don't see amongst men, the way they treat each other, has also damaged a lot of veterans. And we need to be aware of that unconscious, unruly behavior in the way that some veterans will treat other veterans. And so I would really recommend being careful who you hook up with. I would recommend thinking twice about the place that you're at now, whether it's actually going to be a long-term, realistic, spot or haven for the worst-case scenario that honestly a lot of people are preparing for, because we can be looking at some major challenges the next couple of years. Right now, I'm in Trinidad. Okay, Trinidad is a much better place to be than Portland, but Trinidad is not the place that I would want to be with its proximity to the freeway and military bases. It is not the place I would want to be in the next couple of years or next 2 years if things get really crazy, because it still is a city full of people with city thinking and programming from the media. People in general in large numbers, if they're heavily programmed to react and behave in a certain way, there can be a liability there. But I am in a region of North America that within 50 miles or so, I see a lot of potential for spots that are really going to be sheltered from some of the worst case scenarios that can come from a full-on dollar collapse in which food rioting is taking place. And the reason why I think it's nestled is because you're away from those major supermarkets and places where lots of humans congregate, and people aren't going to be rushing to areas that are typically dry in such circumstances, which is why it's valuable to have land in certain areas where there isn't running water, because the biggest issue isn't whether or not you have water. You can store water. It's whether or not you're going to have a bunch of people trying to raid that particular neighborhood or area because of what value is perceived to be there. Anyways, we talked about a lot of different off-the-grid thoughts. I'm going to be back with more and another video on how my quinoa crop is doing. Some of the plants are already up to 18 inches. This is really powerful knowledge to share with other survivalists, either would-be survivalists or people that have been living off the grid for multiple years. There are places in North America, like where I am right now, where crops that solely normally come from Bolivia and Peru can be grown. Quinoa can be grown here, and quinoa is a crop with all 9 essential amino acids, which means it's a complete protein, which means if you only had one crop and only one bucket of food, quinoa can keep a certain amount of people alive, breathing, and functioning. And that's also very important knowledge to impart. I'm Alex Yancey, signing off from Southern Colorado, June 9th, 2015.